evening. Welcome back to ACI Course 5, How Karma Works. So happy that you come back to the course. This is class 5. So before we get started, let's take a moment to set our motivation. Be clear in your mind your motivation for taking this course and for being here today. What brought you to this Zoom call? Make it as big as you can. And as clear as you can. Sashi Puki Jukshin Metotram Rirablingshi Ninde Gempadi Sange Shindu Mikte Uwargi Drokun Namdak Singla Chuparsho Idam Guru Ratnam Mandalakam Niryatayami Sange Chiram Soki Chuknam La Jangchu Partu Dakni Kyapsu Chi Daki Jushe Ki Pe Sunam Ki Jola Penshir Sange Druparsho Sange Chudang Soki Chudang
Ja
Pardu Dakni Kapsuchi Daki Chushe Ki Pe Sunam Ki Chola Pinchir Sange Druparsho Sange Chudang Soki Na
la
Jangchu Pardu Dakni Kapsuchi Daki Chushe Ki Pe Sunam Ki Drola Pinchir Sange Druparsho. So before we get started on this class, which is about how karma is carried, does anybody have any questions from previous classes? How's it going with the readings and the homeworks and the quizzes? Okay, great. Oh, good. Persis, thank you. I'm glad it's great for you. And I'll just take it that you're speaking for everyone. Okay. Okay, so we've talked about what what makes something a virtue and what makes something a non-virtue. Um, and we've talked about different kinds of divisions of karma. And today we're going to talk about how karma is carried. How does it stay with us? How do we carry it over time? Over time in this life and over time into our subsequent lives, our next lives. And today we are going to, we've been wearing our Abhidharma hat, our Hinayana hat, uh, the lower way. And today we're going to wear a Mahayana hat, a great vehicle hat. And we're going to talk about how karma is carried from the perspective primarily of the mind-only school. And then also a little bit about what the consequence branch thinks about how karma is carried, at least as what they think about what the mind-only school thinks. So the text that we're going to use for this class is called Uma Gongpa Rabsa. C'est Uma Gongpa Rabsa. This is a book by Geshe Kappa. He also wrote the Lamrim Chenmo. We've been exposed to him before in our classes. We here at ACI are big fans of Geshe Kappa. He was a brilliant scholar. Uma means middle way. Gongpa means real intent. And Rabsal means total clarification or total illumination. So this book is called Illumination of the True Thought of the Middle Way. And actually, Geshe Michael has been translating this text, which is quite long. He's been translating it for many, many years, and he just finished it last December. And he's gone on to work on different things, but he's said he was going to come back to it sometime in the middle of this year to, it's good to put things to the side for a little while and then come back before you do your final edit. So he'll be doing that hopefully sometime soon so that we'll have this book. It's an extraordinary book. It's really wonderful. So it's nice that we get some exposure to it now. So the reading that you have is translation that he did, gosh, I think in 1994, maybe. So quite some time ago. So it would be interesting for us to see what, if any, the difference is with what he publishes later this year. Okay, so this is a book about the middle way, and it's Geshe Kappa is commenting on a book called Entering the Middle Way by Master Chandrakirti. And Master Chandrakirti's book, Entering the Middle Way, is a commentary on Arya Nagarjuna's book, Root Text on Wisdom. And when they say middle way, it's not just that philosophical school, but it means Arya Nagarjuna's root text on wisdom. So in this book, Master Chandrakirti spends some time talking about what the mind-only school believes about the way things exist. And there's a lot to say about that, but we're going to limit ourselves to talk about, in particular, what it is that the mind-only school says about how we carry these karmic seeds with us over time. What's going on there? And the mind-only school, the Tibetan word for that is, there are many different words for it, but this is one called Sem Sampa. Say Sem Sampa. So Sem means mind. And Sam, this is a word, well, we hear Sem a lot too, but Sam, it means merely, or only, or just mind. And then Pa is just an ending that in the Tibetan language to indicate a person. So a person who is Sem Sam. And Sem Sam means mind only. So I was trying to think about how best to talk about this from the beginning. So we'll see how this, oops, my document doesn't show up. One moment, please, while I find, there we go. The share challenged once again. Okay, so what we're going to use as our framework to talk about how karma is carried is, and you may have heard this from Geshe Michael from his stories, but he likes to use this image of an angry boss. So we're going to talk about how is it that we see an angry boss? You know, what kind of karma it is ripening into that experience, and then what kind of karma is planted based on how we respond to that experience of having an angry boss yelling at us. So in our normal, like non-Buddhist way of thinking about things, in our normal way of thinking, we think there's some angry boss out there. And this angry boss, you know, everything was fine. We're working away. Everything was fine. And then the angry boss walks in and starts yelling at us. So we think he's out there. And then we think that our eyeballs, you know, are pointed at him, and that's how we see him. We're going to use the visual sense, because we could talk about any of the senses, but we'll talk about the visual sense here. But of course, you're going to be hearing him, You may, I don't know, you may feel the heat from his anger on your skin. I don't know. But so the eyeball takes in this image, and the eye, we know this from science, it only sees colors and shapes, right? We know that these little, sorry for the non-translated slide, but these little things down here, rods and cones, are taking in sensory data and creating colors and shapes. And then our brain, the visual cortex part of the brain, takes this information in about colors and shapes, and it like decides what to do about it. Like, what is this? What are these colors and shapes? What do they mean? Am I in danger? Do I need to run away? Or, what do I need to do to respond? So this is how we think our experience of seeing our angry boss, what's going on when that happens. And the Tibetan words, so for the angry boss, it's yul. Say yul. Can you see those words okay? Is it big enough? Okay. Yul means object. And then in the middle here, our eyeball, that's called Miki Wangpo. Say Miki Wangpo. Miki Wangpo. So Mik means eye, and then Wangpo means power. So this is the eye sense power, which means those bits of our eyeball in the back there that take in light and see colors and shapes. And then the visual cortex part of our brain, the part of our brain that is conscious or aware of what it is that we see with our eye sense power, is called the eye consciousness. And that's Miki Namshe. Say Miki Namshe. So that's what we think is going on here. Now, in Buddhist philosophy, there is this idea of 6 different consciousnesses. We've just talked about the eye consciousness. We also have ear consciousness, nose consciousness, tongue consciousness, tactile consciousness, and mind consciousness. So there are 6 that all the Buddhist philosophical schools accept as existing. The mind-only school, they posit there must be 2 more consciousnesses. Nobody else agrees with them, but they say we must also have something called a nyunyi, which is a consciousness that is our mental affliction consciousness, and a kunshi. And this kunshi is a foundation consciousness. That's what kunshi means. Foundation. Well, altogether it's kunshi nampar shepa, but kunshi. And so this is, now of course, consciousness really isn't our brain or an organ, right? Consciousness is something that is, it's not physical. So we can't really draw a picture of it. But so that's why I made it look like a blob. So this is our consciousness, and then it has all these little things in it. And all of these little things are called bakchaks. Say bakchak. And a bakchak means a mental seed. So when we talk about karma, planting seeds, we're talking about bakchaks, planting bakchaks. And according to the mind-only school, all these bakchaks that we create with every movement of the mind, and every time we speak and every time we act, they get planted in the kunshi. So the kunshi holds all the karmic seeds, according to the mind-only school, but it is also it's two things at once. It is, and I'll describe this more in a second, so just hold on. So it not only holds seeds, but it is also an expression of seeds. It is a manifestation of ripened karmic seeds, of ripened bakchaks. So the way seeds are planted is, and this is according to mind only, we do some action. Since we've got our little arrow pointed at a little face with his tongue out, let's say that that's a negative karma. We've got some positive ones in here too. But so let's say that we're doing something like, well, let's say we're yelling at our kids. So as we're yelling at our kids, as that action comes to its conclusion, as we reach the end of our yelling at our kids, that the energy of that action, the energy of the movement of our mind, the energy of our speech as we're yelling, any movement we do with our body, that energy plants this mental seed in our mind. And what happens is that this energy like puts a stain. It smears the kunshi. Now, of course, I'm using words that describe something visual, and I'm showing you something visual, but this is not at all visual, right? This is not at all physical. We're not talking about a physical place. We're not talking about physical seeds. And when we plant and we smear, this smearing is not a physical smearing. There's not a visible stain that we can see. These are just our metaphors for talking about something that we can't. It's very difficult to talk about because it's just experience. So we've planted this mental seed. We've created this stain on the kunshi, and you can see there's a whole bunch of them in there, and there's countless numbers, trillions of these stains. And as we talked about last time, The mental seeds can ripen in any of 3 times, right? They can ripen in this life. They can ripen in our next life, or they can ripen in some life after that. And we also talked about some of the ways that we can, some of the factors that make a karmic seed ripen into an experience more quickly or less quickly, depending on who it is that we're interacting with, depending on how much, what our motivation is, how strong, how clear our motivation is, like that. So all these bakchaks are hanging out in the kunchi. So that's where they go. According to Mind Only School, we have to have this consciousness, this foundation consciousness, to hold all of these karmic seeds, all of these mental seeds. So these seeds are, at this point, they're potentials, right? They are the potential for an experience that will either bring us pleasure or bring us pain or some neutral effect. But they're all going to ripen into an experience. Now, what's going on when that ripens into an experience? So let's use this little guy here with his tongue sticking out, that this is the mental seed that's going to ripen. So when it ripens into 2 things basically simultaneously, basically at the same time. The first thing is it ripens into, in our example here of the experience of seeing an angry boss, it ripens into our I sense power. And by extension, it ripens into the angry boss. At the same time, it ripens into our I consciousness. So in basically the same time, this one seed has ripened into our awareness of our I sense power, our eyeball, seeing an angry boss. So now ripens into, what does that mean? That means that it's not like a little piece of kunchi comes into physical being as that part of our brain inside of our head or the back of our eyeball or an angry boss outside who just came in my office. It's not that the kunchi moves from an immaterial form, something that is not physical form, and turns into something that is physical form. No, what's going on is far more radical than that. our consciousness, our awareness of what we see, that is kunchi. That is the foundation consciousness. There is no physical visual cortex. There is no head, physical head, in which a brain exists, a brain that has a visual cortex. When we are aware of what our sense powers is bringing in, colors and shapes, when we are aware of colors and shapes, that is the kunchi. The colors and shapes, although we talk about them as a physical thing, although we experience color and shape as relating to physical objects, is not physical object. It is our foundation consciousness appearing as color and shape. The angry boss, they're in the mind-only school. They hold that there is no external object. There is only this foundation consciousness that holds the potential for experience based on what we've done and said and thought in the past, the bakchaks, the karmic seeds that we've, the actions we've done, and then it ripens into the experience. So the experience is totally a mental experience. There's no physical object we can touch. So it works for all of our sense consciousness and sense power pairs. We think when we clap our hands or when we put our hands into a prayer mudra, we think that we've got these two appendages out here at the end of these arms, and that we're bringing them together, and we think we feel something that's happening out there. When we stub our toe, we think that there's this tiny little appendage that hit some hard outside object, totally separate from us, and it hits it, that there is contact between two physical objects. Mind-only school says that's an illusion. That's a mistake. Every part of our experience, the sense power taking in the data, pain from stubbing my toe, and then being conscious of it, being aware of it, those come from those are the manifestation of the foundation consciousness. That manifestation being caused by the ripening of a mental seed. So when the mind-only school talks about this, they are called mind-only for a reason. This consciousness that they say exists, that nobody else agrees with, they say there must be a foundation consciousness. Otherwise, where would the karmic seeds be? What else could possibly be going on if not for this? If not for some consciousness that's separate from the other six, that holds the seeds, holds the mental seeds, and ripens into the experience. So before we go on, I just wonder if there are any questions about this weird graphic, about what's going on with the perception of an angry boss according to the mind-only school. So according to them, if you kiss your wife, you're kissing no one. So according to them, your wife is your foundation consciousness. So you're kissing with lips that are foundation consciousness, and you're kissing your foundation consciousness. You think you're kissing your wife, but that tactile sensation is just foundation consciousness that has manifested that way, and we mistake it for an act of putting lips that don't exist. They're really only internal. They are just the foundation consciousness meeting those lips with the lips of our wife, whose only we mistake there to be a wife who's outside of us, who's separate from us, who's a physical, mental being. That's our foundation consciousness. So, do physical objects exist in the mind-only school? No. There's no such thing as an external object. No such thing. Everything that's going on in our experience of everything is is just the movement of consciousness. We have various consciousnesses. We have various sense powers that we mistake to be associated with physical organs. Like we think there's some physical skin and that there are some physical nerves going from skin, just beneath the surface of the skin into our our spine and going up our spine and then into a part of the brain that can interpret those impulses running along the nerves. But mind only says, no, that's a mistake. That's the foundation consciousness. So according to mind only school, every time we think that we are having some experience of an outside or physical object, that's a mistake. That's a mistake. That's actually the workings of what's called the nuni, the mental affliction mind. The mental affliction mind that consciousness, which none of the other schools agree with that one either, but that one looks at the foundation consciousness, which, remember, according to them, means using our example here, it looks at the angry boss. It looks at the awareness of seeing the angry boss, some external person. And it thinks this is all happening to me. To me. My experience. So it is mistaking the foundation consciousness as me and mine. So that's pretty wild, right? The consequence branch is even more wild than that, but we'll get there. Right. The mind only school says everything that we experience is a manifestation of the foundation consciousness. Everything that ripens into an experience is a mental seed that was planted from our previous actions of body, speech, and mind. So they've wrapped this up all quite nicely in explaining how we plant seeds, right? That every time there's a movement of the mind, and then what that inspires, that's somehow smearing our foundation, this foundation consciousness. And those smears, those potentials for an experience, good, or I should say pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral, they'll ripen after some time. As the Abhidharma talked about, it could ripen in this life. It could ripen in the next life. It could ripen in some life after that. But in the meantime, all those potentials, all those bakchaks, mental seeds, are hanging out in the foundation consciousness, in the kunshi. How are we doing? Is that okay? Any questions? It really takes it takes some time to wrap our heads around what it is the mind only school is proposing, because it's really quite profound. So question, do mental objects that have ripened from seeds now exist independently? Independently of what? According to the mind only school, one object from another. So according to the mind only school, everything, it's so difficult to talk about because our language, at least my language, is so based in physical reality. Where the mind only school says, that's a mistake. That's so incorrect. All you do is experience. All that ever happens for you is our experiences, pleasurable experiences, unpleasurable experiences, neutral experiences, visual experiences, auditory experiences, and so on. Each of these experiences is a mental event. It's all your foundation consciousness appearing to you that way as an external object. So this little bakchak guy here on our slide looks to us like he's ripened into as the angry boss. That's what we think is going on. We think that we yelled at our kids. And so then what happens is that our boss comes and is angry. And we see him that way. And we have an awareness of seeing him as an angry boss. That he's someone out there. But mind only says that's mistaken. Everything that occurs for us, every experience we have, it's all mental. It's all the machinations, if you will, of karma and the foundation consciousness, of mental seeds and the foundation consciousness. So if there is no outside objects, is it how can we have a mind? How can we have a mind? Well, the mind is not a physical object. In our normal everyday world, we tend to think of mind as the brain, and that what the brain is doing is sending like these, I don't know the right words, but sending like electrical pulses down certain pathways, and that these spark like sight and thought and physical sensation. But I know I have not looked into the research lately, but I know that I think it is still an unanswered question about where does consciousness exist in the human body. And they have not found it because it is not a physical thing. The stuff that's going on in this physical, again, we're not wearing our mind only hat. We're wearing our everyday Joe hat. What's going on inside of this physical head with this physical brain that, we have experienced sometimes, like, well, we have many experiences, but anyway, what's going on with is just these electrical impulses. And our brain, through these electrical impulses, is interpreting these impulses. It's like it's all energy that's going on inside of this physical brain. And it interprets these things as, oh, I have a headache, or, oh, I just got kissed by my wife, or, oh, this flower smells really nice. But all of that is happening in here. Like the touching, the physical sensation. We see two fingers meet. And when they meet, there's just this electrical impulse that happens. But taking off our everyday Joe hat and putting our mind only hat back on, there are no, like two fingers out there coming into physical contact. All of that. It's like a play put on by our foundation consciousness. A play that we can have, normally when we think about going to a play, it's all about on stage, right? And we're just in the audience, and sometimes they make us laugh and sometimes they make us cry. But this play is, I guess they call it, like, it's like virtual reality. It's like all going on in your foundation consciousness. does time exist in this school? They do talk about time. They talk about, for example, like the question comes up, well, if what's really going on, according to you, mind only, if what's really going on is that my experience of seeing and being aware of seeing an angry boss is all the foundation consciousness, that there is no external object, then why do I make this mistake? What why would I make this mistake? If it's just so false, it's so wrong. And they say that it's from seeing things that wrong way for beginningless time. Our propensity for seeing things, for seeing the foundation consciousness as an external object, is a mistake due to having thought that for beginningless time. It is an amazing, remember we talked about what can make something more likely to produce a result is if you do it over and over and over. Here's an example from the mind-only perspective of, because we have this habit of seeing things as external, as seeing things as coming towards us and not as a ripening of our foundation consciousness. That's why we see it that way. So that time, beginningless time, infinite amount of time. I can't see my clock while I'm in this mode. Oh gosh, we've been talking for an hour already, or I've been talking for an hour. So this information is something that we have to sit with and think, contemplate, meditate on. The mind-only school, it for me was not that I've cracked it yet, but I'm a lot more comfortable with it now than when I first heard about it. And what really helped me a lot was the translation course. And Wordsmith, he had classes on Jason Kappa again. Jason Kappa's book, Difficult Points on the Mind Only School. And then also the text that I got to translate, which talked about what does emptiness mean from the different philosophical schools' perspectives. And so over the past 7 years, it's like it's regular contact with this idea that the mind-only school presents of these whole other consciousnesses that are creating our experience, creating our reality, right? So we get to just continue on and remember, anything that doesn't make sense, I think it's a good practice. Whenever there's anything that doesn't make sense, to like acknowledge it. Wow, this doesn't make sense. Why doesn't it? What is the question exactly? Can I be as precise as possible on where I'm struggling? Sometimes I'm fortunate enough to find out there's something about how I ask the question, that there's something mistaken in my question sometimes. Sometimes I just don't get it. I can't see where I'm mistaken. I can't see how what's being told to me makes any sense at all. And so then you just put it aside and say, okay, this is here. I will come back to it. And don't forget it. Don't leave it sitting there to collect dust forever. If it's part of the Buddhist teachings, in my experience anyway, it's something that is of great value to me and my practice of getting out of the cycle of pain. So we have some other things to talk about. Let's see. Oh my gosh. I'm so share challenged. I should just, accept that I'm a share challenged person. Okay. So everything is foundation consciousness. There are no outer forms. Every time we use our eyes or taste a good meal or kiss our partner, it's just it's the manifestation of a mental seed that is influencing the foundation consciousness to be that for us. So, I mean, doesn't it make sense that if we do some non-virtuous action, and if it's true that doing a non-virtuous action results in some kind of suffering, experience of suffering for ourselves in the future, whether this life, next life, or some life after that, doesn't it make sense, this mind-only idea, that it's the foundation consciousness that creates our sense power, that creates whatever we think of as some external object that's bringing us suffering, our angry boss, that it creates our awareness of that it's all happening in the same place. One of the there's two different flavors of emptiness in the mind only school, and one of them relevant to this discussion is that things are empty of us as a perceiver and what we perceive, and our awareness of that is empty of coming from different seeds, separate seeds, that the perceiver and the perceived, they come from the same seed. I've seen Geshe Michael do this sort of action. Like if you think of seeds as being in your heart or something, the seed ripens into me experiencing something and the something I'm experiencing. One seed. It's hard to do it. I'll do it from the brain. One seed ripens into two things. The perceiver and the perceived. So a lot of the questions were somehow related to, a question of, well, what is the raw material that we are perceiving and then thinking of as in a certain way? Like if we think about the angry boss, the raw material being, the red oval and an open mouth and a red tongue. That's the raw material. And then our awareness thinks of it, is aware of that visual consciousness, aware of seeing those colors and shapes, and it thinks, oh, angry boss. So we think of, oh, there has to be some raw material, colors and shapes out there on which we project angry boss. But in this school, the raw material is consciousness. The raw material is foundation consciousness. Does that mean that other people don't exist? That doesn't mean that other people don't exist. Remember, we're talking about our experience. If you are who you appear to be, which is like me, which is like stuck in this suffering world, I can only know for certain what it is that I experience. I have no idea. With this, I can have some clue, actually. It's not no idea. If I see someone smiling, then I have a guess that they're either happy or they think I'm a fool. Something like that. Um, but I don't know what they're thinking. I don't know what anyone else's experience is of what I say. I only know my own experience. Just because I only know my own experience, uh, just because everything I experience is a manifestation of my foundation consciousness, still wearing my mind only hat, just because of those things, that does not mean that no one else exists. Something else to chew on. The illusion is that we think that others are somehow separate from our consciousness. Others exist. Um, they others suffer, and we must help them. I mean, this may sound very radical, but I shouldn't say but. And when we get to talking about what the consequence branch thinks about what's going on, it's far more radical than that. So that's the basic process of what's going on from the mind only school perspective. And mind only school is a Mahayana school. It is, I've heard many teachers say that the philosophy of the mind only school is so very close to what's going on that there's just actually just one little thing that we need to do. And it has to do with the kunchi, which is just kick out the idea of a kunchi. And we are at the highest school, at the explanation of the highest school of what's going on for us in our experiences, how we experience, what we experience. Okay, I better move on quickly. So we talked about the two things that that are produced by a karmic seed, right? The two things produced by a karmic seed are the sense consciousness, the sense power, the eyeball, the rods and cones at the back of the eyeball, taking in colors and shapes, and the sense consciousness, the awareness of seeing something. So when, for some reason, they don't say, oh, there's three, because I would think there's three. There's your sense power, there's your sense consciousness, and then there's the object that's being perceived. But no, they say the object is by extension of the sense power, that the sense power is, it's like our window. Again, language is so, we're so limited by language. Like almost everything is a metaphor. Our window to the world is our sense power. So everything, the world, is basically by extension related to our sense power. Okay, so those are the two things: sense power, and by extension, the object, and sense consciousness. Okay. We talked a bit about how karma is planted. I'll just briefly go over it again. That's when you are, for example, yelling at someone. There's the awareness of yourself yelling at someone. You're yelling, you're yelling, you're yelling, you're yelling. And then as you come to the end of yelling, as you go, your voice box stops vibrating. You stop making sound. Then that stains your kunshi. That stains your foundation consciousness with a mental seed. Okay? And then you're moving on to the next thing, because you're always creating karma. Always creating karma. So we're constantly staining our foundation consciousness. Whether that they're going to ripen into a positive or pleasant or unpleasant or neutral experience depends on whether it was a virtuous or non-virtuous or neutral activity that we did. So how does the karmic seed stay? It continues moment by moment. The karmic seed is a changing thing. And so in every moment, it's continuing on. It's just replicating itself instant by instant. The energy of, if we just think about it all energetically, the energy of the action of what we did, staining our foundation consciousness, that's also an energy, and that energy like propels it, just keeps it going. It just continues on replicating itself over and over. Now, the middle way does have a couple of issues with the mind-only school. Mainly, they say that everything's so right on.
Here's what I found.
Oh, Siri thought I was asking a question. Go away. The middle way school says to the mind only, you don't need a kunchi. You don't need another consciousness. a foundation consciousness. You don't need a place to store these seeds. These mental seeds, they continue in the stream of your mind, they say. In your mind stream. And what is a mind stream? But we can call it a series of moments of awareness. Each moment of awareness causes the next moment of awareness. And the karmic seeds, the bakchaks, we create by our activity of body, speech, and mind. Those propensities, those mental seeds live in this stream of moment to moment awareness. Now, Jason Kappa says, what does Chandrakirti mean? What does Master Chandrakirti mean when he says that mental seeds live in the stream of mind, in the stream of consciousness? He says it means the simple, unexamined me. The simple, unexamined me. We all have this idea of me. It's like this idea doesn't go away. This idea of me. I'm experiencing things. I have a sense of myself here sitting before a camera. I assume you do as well. So in that idea, me, that's where the mental seeds live, and that's how they're carried on through time. And that simple me is called nga sam. Say nga sam. Sam we had before, that means just or only, merely. And nga means me or I. So nga sam, just me. It's the mind-only school idea now becomes a lot more comfortable, doesn't it? They say there's this foundation consciousness. They say there's this whole other place. Geshe Michael calls it a refrigerator, where seeds are stored, right? That we can now collect them in a place. They've got a place. This foundation consciousness. The middle way idea is it's not a place. It's the simple me, the unexamined me that exists moment by moment by moment by moment of awareness of me. So we're not looking into, does the me exist? How does the me exist? We're not examining its emptiness. It's just the simple me. Just the simple me. Now, it's possible I can finish what we need to finish. So there's a verse in your reading. It's from a sutra, which is teachings by the Buddha. And it's called the Sutra Requested by Utpala. And basically, this verse talks about how heaven is a creation of your mind. Heaven is made by your mind. Master Shantideva, in his book, Bodhisattva's Way of Life, he talks about how hell is made by your mind. So it's both the same idea. It's not that if you're in a good mood, you're in heaven, and if you're in a bad mood, you're in hell. It's that there really is a place, a heaven with where we experience bliss for an infinite amount of time. A Buddha's paradise. There are hells where we can experience eons of misery and pain. Where the mind only school says, oh, this is all foundation consciousness. Yeah, right. We're talking about the same thing. It's slightly different from the middle way perspective. From the middle way perspective, it's Tokpe Tak Sam. Tokpe Tak Sam. And Tokpe means by our own conceptions, through our own conceptions. Sam, once again, that means mere or just or only. And tak, spelled in many different ways, but means labeled. The middle way says that heaven, hell, our world, our experience, me, everything is just labeled through our conceptions. So the difference is that the middle way school says, oh, there is some raw material, and it has indicators or indications. There's something about that raw material that suggests heaven or hell or angry boss or wife. And when we perceive those indications, we label it wife, angry boss, heaven. Where the mind only school says it's just foundation consciousness. So the middle way is introducing this idea of labeling. Mind only school does as well, but they talk about it in a different way, and we don't get into it in this course. But they do have different ideas about that. Now the question comes in the middle way. Well, what about those indications? What about the raw data? That also is is only labeled through conception. The red face, the sound decibels of yelling. Those are labeled by conception. And we can go down further and further. Each indicator we look at, we can, in one sense, we can call it tearing away. We're looking more closely and we're seeing that, oh, that part is just also made of parts on which we think about them in a certain way. We conceptualize them through labeling parts. And by continuing to look at parts and the parts of the parts and the parts of those parts and the parts of those parts is one of the ways that we can meditate on emptiness, because we will never reach in the middle way school a part that doesn't have parts, a part that is not labeled just through conception. And I've gone 2 minutes over, for which I apologize. I didn't get to the last question, and I promise that I will get to it in next class in 2 days. So thank you for your patience with me. Thank you for your interest in these ideas. And please don't forget to dedicate the incredible, powerful, virtuous seeds you created through being in this class. Don't forget. And I will see you in 2 days. I love you all. Have wonderful, wonderful days.
Thank you, Venerable. Thank you. Thank you.